Welcome back to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Sunday Times best-selling author Catherine Gray. Catherine's first book, The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober, inspired thousands of people to change their relationship with alcohol, and that includes me and Steve. If you're questioning whether alcohol is making your life better or worse, there is no better place to start than with Catherine's books. Her new book, Little Addictions: Freedom from Our Tiny but Mighty Compulsions, launched recently. And the central premise is that we can all identify something, maybe several things, that we don't necessarily need to quit, but we're probably doing too much of. These little addictions might not be costing us much emotionally or financially, and they may only be micro consequences to our health, wealth, relationships, and home life, but the cumulative impact of these tiny habits can be huge. Regular listeners to the show will know that Steve and I have been looking forward to this one for some time. Catherine, a very warm welcome to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. That was so nicely done.
Wasn't it? It's almost like he prepared it.
I mean,
Seamless.
I'd
I
like
can
to
do
say that
that.
was off the top of my head, but like to be well prepared.
Exactly. Well, it's great to have you along, and I've got to say, I know James mentioned it there, but you kind of rewinding The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober was definitely a pivotal book for me, and resonated with me very much so, particularly in the kind of opening few paragraphs when, opening couple of chapters when talked about life in London, because that was my era. I may have been responsible of selling you some of those drinks, and I do apologise.
Really? Did you
But
work
I
in a
could,
bar in
yeah.
London? Because I probably
Well,
went
also,
there.
yeah, exactly. And you refer to a few places like the Dog Star and places that I remember very well, also. So it
Oh,
resonated
you
very
were a
well.
Brixton
Yeah,
guy.
Clapham North. I lived in Clapham North, so yeah, I was down there a
Oh, I
fair
see.
bit.
We probably partied together.
Probably.
You weren't the one who owned the snake, are you, Steve? I picked something
Yeah, the
up in
yellow
the
python.
yellow
That was
python.
scary.
Oh, you mean Bob? Oh, let me just get him for you. It's just
Oh my God, I think my trauma response just activated.
Oh no.
Just
Well,
to
it's
just to tell fill listeners in on that story. That was one morning that I woke up in on a random leather sofa in Clapham, which was already quite scary because sleeping on a leather sofa is not comfortable, and found I don't even know how big it was. I reckon it was like at least 5 foot. This yellow python in an like cage that did not look secure, eyeballing me. I had just gone back to this strange house because they promised me that they had cider. It was not a fun morning, but I had so many mornings like that. Did you? How?
many.
Oh yeah.
Many. I was just trying to remember what colour our sofa was in Clapham, actually. But
Was it
it's
brown?
fine. It was brown, but we never had a python, and I don't drink cider, so it's all good. I certainly didn't. Also, never used to drink cider either. But yeah. Oh no, it was very pivotal for me, and yeah, loved it as a book. Amongst it was up there at the top of my quit lit when I decided to take a break. So me and James are about 5 years alcohol free now, so that was kind of
That's amazing. Well
yeah,
done.
yeah,
Officially long term.
officially long term,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Your
Yeah.
chances of going back plummet after you hit 4 years. They go down to like 10% and then just go further down.
Yeah,
So that is
especially when
amazing.
you decide to launch a podcast called the Alcohol Free Revolution as well.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't go hand in. It's not on brand.
Accountability
We
sucks.
It's
No,
an interesting
it's
point
great.
actually because it's probably similar for you because we've spoken about this before actually. Is that when you really invest in your brand as almost being I'm an alcohol free person. You in your case, Catherine, you've written obviously many books and we've got a podcast and we coach and things like that. You're almost kind of doubling down on it. You couldn't possibly go back to drinking even if you had any desire whatsoever to because it's your brand now. It's what you're
Oh,
known
yeah.
it's what you're known for, right?
Mhm.
It's so true. You've got yourself in a health bind. You have to do what's best for you. It's awful. No,
Absolutely,
I love it. I
absolutely.
love it. It's
So
good
you're
thing to
you're
do.
12 years. You've done 12 years now. That's right.
Yeah, so I'll be 13 in September. Can't quite
Wow,
believe it.
officially a
Like,
teenager.
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna start acting out.
Do you have any kind of sense of loss? Do you miss it at all?
Absolutely not.
Brilliant.
Um, uh, like no part of me misses it, and I think one of the reasons for that is because I've done so much writing about it, and writing it down, I think, and clarifying it and talking about it like you're doing here sharing about it in meetings, talking about it with your sober friends, whatever way you sort of lock that in, I think that really helps you go forth and feel no regrets and feel no, craving towards it. I genuinely never crave it, and I haven't done for years and years and years. I would say probably 6 or 7 years. I haven't even felt a tiny pull. In fact, when
Mm,
I smell it, I just feel disgusted. I'm like, that's
really?
gross. So yeah, I'm here as like a beacon of hope for those who were in the early days, because that was definitely not the case. In my first 30 days, my first year, my first 2 years, I still felt very much, that I could have a drink, I could have a drink, I could have a drink going round and round my head.
Mm,
And it just got less and less and less as time goes on. And now that I understand the neuroscience around it, of course, I understand why that is. You're forging a new sober pathway, and it takes a long while for the what about a drink, what about now pathway to
mm,
fade. But it does. And there's hope that you will get to a point where you go for days and weeks and months without thinking about drinking, and not missing it at all. So yeah, everyone keep going.
yeah. And it's that volume of all the positives that gets turned up and outweighs the sound of the drinks. Certainly in that, as you move in beyond that sort of 6 months to a year, whatever. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's another reason why I think it's so important to lock down those positives, however you do it,
yeah,
because if you don't, they will slide away and you might start to forget about the negatives. So lock down the negatives of drinking and the positives of not drinking. Otherwise, your brain might sort of drift back to that place where it thinks that drinking is a good idea, even though
Yeah.
you have resolutely, definitively
It's the fading
confirmed
effect
that it
bias,
is
isn't it?
not. Yeah.
Mm.
So, but what about you two? How's 5 years hanging for you? Do you ever miss it? Oh,
I just
I don't miss it. Sorry, James, I'm
no, you
jumping in
go.
there, but I no, I don't miss it at all. No, I genuinely don't. I kind of, there'll be those kind of microseconds when you walk past a pub on a
mm,
sunny afternoon and you see a cold beer and then you realize, oh, I could go in there, and then you think, actually, yes, I can go in there. I just happen to get one that has zero written on the side, and it really doesn't bother me at all. And actually, I still enjoy all those things that I enjoyed when I was drinking. And yeah, it took a while to get there, but no, I genuinely don't miss it one bit. In fact, we're kind of having some conversations recently about this. I think I'm at that stage now where in the first few years, I've kind of had that identity of someone who doesn't drink, and now I'm kind of moving to the stage now where I just kind of don't want that necessarily to be the case. And I appreciate that's difficult in what we do, but I'm just happy being me now, and I'm happy with alcohol-free life and everything that it brings. Doesn't bother me at all.
yeah. It's your new normal.
Yeah.
And it's really, I know what you mean about the identity thing. I don't really think, obviously, I'm a non drinker, but I don't really, that's not central to my identity now
Mm,
because there's so much other stuff going on. It's just what it is. It's
yep.
just a fact about me. Um, and what you said about the pub is so interesting because that microsecond, now that I did so much research for the new book about dopamine, and now that I understand dopamine, I understand why that happens.
Mm,
Mm.
So actually, the smell is probably the most powerful trigger for the craving. That causes like a cascade of dopamine, which is all about wanting, by the way, and it
yeah.
has nothing to do with like, the wiser parts of your brain. It's just like that instant where you smell it and you want it. And it takes a really long time for that to go away. And also the sight of it, you know,
Mm.
that makes that dopamine come cascading down as well. So now that I understand that, I understand those cues. So what about you, James? How is it feeling for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be 5 years in September, and it- life just gets better and better. I'll be honest. I mean, I turned 50 last year, and I honestly feel happier and healthier than I have done in my entire life.
You
Honestly
do not
changed.
look 50.
Thank you very much. Um,
You, however, Steve,
you, Steve,
Yes, Steve.
yeah,
you're
Uh,
yeah,
well on your
Normal
way,
yes,
aren't
Steve looks at least 52. But no, it's honestly I was probably drinking about 40, 50 units of alcohol a week. And it, it changed my life. Honestly, going alcohol free absolutely changed my life. I had a pretty okay life. Everything was relatively fine, but I was a classic middle lane drinker. But it just, I wasn't really particularly health conscious. I ate okay. I never went to the gym or anything like that. I just kind of drifted around doing my job, and it was just such a transformational event in my life. And I'd kind of tried it when I was 40. So I first read Alan Carr, who I know you read as well,
Yeah.
and I remember being in a pool in Abu Dhabi, and all of a sudden, I literally had this moment of almost spontaneous sobriety, where, I hadn't. I bought the book because it's called How to Control Alcohol, and as Alan speaks about in the book, he calls it that for a reason. Because if he called it How to Quit Alcohol, you wouldn't have read it, and that was me exactly. I wasn't planning on quitting alcohol, and then I got to the end of this book, and I was in a pool in Abu Dhabi, and I was a bit like, oh my god. I don't think I'm going to drink again. And then I stopped for 4 months and I was a bit like, I've just nailed this. I can't believe it. This is amazing. And I was telling everyone about how I'd quit booze and I was never going to drink again. And then I started a new job and I was in a sales role and I was kind of a bit concerned that people aren't going to warm to me because I'm not drinking and they're going to feel awkward around me and all that. And I thought, well, I'll crack this anyway. So I'll just, I can just turn it off and on when I want. And of course, it all came back and I got back and I ended up back where I started. And I was like, and it took me 5 years of taking breaks and everything. And I just couldn't get it back. And I was just like, oh, you had it and you fucking lost it, you idiot. And then I read your book and I managed to get it all back again, because I read your book, and then obviously you reference William Porter and Annie Grace in your book, and then I read those books after I read yours, and those three books together got me back to a place where I was a bit like, what doesn't make any sense? Why am I drinking? It doesn't make any sense, because you have that moment, and Andy Ramage, who we coached with, talks about this idea of when you're inside the jar, you can't read the label. And I think reading your book and reading This Naked Mind and Alcohol Explained kind of got me out of the jar and seeing it for what it really was. And after that, I never looked back. And after that, it was just the desire had just disappeared. Um,
Yeah.
and that's actually one of the things that I found from reading Little Addictions, actually. I love reading your stuff, but also it always leads me on to other things. And one thing I found strange about reading Little Addictions is a lot of the books that you reference in Little Addictions I'd already read, because once you get on that kind of health journey, you start seeking out other things. You spoke about The Dose Effects by TJ Powell. I thought that was a great book. And
Dopamine Nation.
Dopamine Nation, yeah, I mean that was absolutely brilliant. And also Ultra Processed People by Dr. Van Tulleken. That was another one that I kind of read a year ago. And it's so fantastic to see all those books kind of crop up in your work as well. And it's such a great route to finding out, other healthy, pursuits and great works of writing that kind of inspire that journey, really. So yeah,
Oh,
in a
thank
great
you.
place.
Well, I am so interested in what you said about how, because I remember that in that Alan Carr book, how to control alcohol, where it
Yeah,
was like, plot twist, the way you control it is by
yeah,
quitting it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
Annie Grace does the same thing. I'm
she does.
almost certain she uses control alcohol in her subtitle. And then,
Yes, I think she
like,
does.
a surprise, the way that you control it is by not drinking it because it's
Mm,
really difficult to control. And I think that's something that I really drill down on in Little Addictions, because there's a chapter about alcohol and how few people moderate. Because
Mm.
moderation is fearsomely difficult, and
mm,
moderation is defined as 1 or 2 drinks per session. And a
wonderful.
binge is now defined as by the NHS as 6 units per
Four
session.
drink,
Mm.
three or four drinks.
Yeah,
It's
and
nothing, is it? I mean,
well,
it's an
I mean, it's two
aperitif.
two large glasses of white wine. That
Yeah.
Yeah,
was a starter for me. That was an
yeah.
Yeah.
aperitif.
Yeah.
And I, by that definition, I genuinely do not know anybody that moderates. Like, I don't.
No.
And because everyone I know binges when they go out and drink.
Mm,
They drink at least 6 units, which is like three, bottles of strongish beer, or 3 small glasses of wine. And so I think we're all caught. I describe it in the book, The Unexpected Joy Being Sober, as like we're in the matrix. Like you say, we're in the jar. We can't read the label.
mm.
Hardly anyone is moderating because it's really difficult to control this thing. Hardly anyone has
Well, it's
cracked it.
addictive, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not you,
Yeah,
it's what's in your glass.
And
exactly.
it's that
And
choice of
it,
the word binge as well. It's not the best word for it, is it? Because when you think of anything with the word binge behind it, you assume this huge amount, and it's not. It's really not.
yeah. And we have lived through so much corruption. I mean, I think it's going to really begin to be uncovered, because I've heard through my like inside sources that a lot is going to change in the UK when it comes to alcohol policy now. You know,
Really?
the labeling, yeah, like so much. I can't say specifically, but huge
Oh,
changes
go
are
on.
coming.
Oh, come on,
Oh
Catherine.
my God, I've
You
been
can't come on and drop a
silent.
bomb like that.
I mean,
We'll just switch
you
off the
can
mic.
guess.
What did Keir Starmer tell you?
Keir Starmer. Yeah, I'll just bring him and get him to
Yeah,
say it on the record.
we'll get him on. We'll get him live.
Can you imagine?
Well, that's really exciting to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Obviously, that's wow.
but it's about bloody time because
Yeah.
they've been getting away with murder for so long, and it's just absolutely bonkers to me that the alcohol industry has got away with downplaying the cancer risk and
Yeah.
you know they funded 82% of studies, clinical studies, in the last 100 years to try and peddle this narrative that moderating alcohol is good for you. And it just isn't. Like, listen to the NHS and the World Health Organization. They know what they're talking about, and they say none is good. You know, no amount is good for you.
Yeah, it's clear. It's really clear.
It's really clear, and I think we're it's a watershed moment now. Like they are going to get caught out for everything that they've done in terms of downplaying and funding clinical studies. So it's an exciting time to be talking about this.
Why do you think that's going to come out then? I appreciate there's some things perhaps you can't tell us, but I know the NHS 10-year report's coming out that's going to potentially include labelling, but I don't know, cynically, I kind of see that as it'll happen, but it'll be like the traffic light labelling on food, that kind of thing. It'd be a bit like, yeah, great, that's a half-hearted effort. You know, you're still going to be taking the money from big alcohol. Do you really think there's going to be systemic change then that's going to be meaningful?
Yeah, I mean, I know what's happening. It's huge.
Bloody hell, wow.
It's going to be huge, and it involves. So I'm sure you've talked about this many, many times. But DrinkAware, which
Yes.
on
Bollocks,
labels
yeah,
right now
basically,
it
yeah.
says, you know, go to drinkaware.co.uk for the facts. DrinkAware is funded by the alcohol industry. You know, it's so corrupt, it's untrue. Experts and doctors and professors have been talking about this for years, you know. Dozens of them signed an open letter about this so many years ago, and nothing's been done. People should not be pointed at DrinkAware for the facts. That's an industry actor that has the industry's interests at heart. So all of that is going to change.
Wow.
You know,
Something
Oh my
that
God, this is amazing.
there was one thing that really stuck out to me in your book, and also when we drove down on a very rainy day to come and see you down at your book signing, when you mentioned about the app
The apps.
that tracks your
yeah,
drinks. Would you mind
they're
just sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was based off a report I read by the Institute of Alcohol Studies, and they call these apps dark apps because they're essentially a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they are apps funded by the like of Drinkaware. But almost every country has their version of Drinkaware, which is an alcohol industry funded responsibility body that is claims to be independent, but continues to peddle the narrative that moderation is the best course of action and that going completely sober is really sad and like the last resort. So, and they always, you know, fund clinical studies which try and support this narrative as well. And these apps, it's just unbelievable. They actually nudge people to drink more. And that's not me asserting that. That's the Institute of Alcohol Studies. And they do this by doing things like, so say for instance, if you're counting your units on one of these apps, they don't include a medium or large glass of wine. So if you want to count a glass of wine, they only have 125 ml, which who drinks that?
It's not
I don't
1990.
even think
A
they
shot,
serve it
isn't
in
it?
cups.
Yeah.
They literally don't.
Yeah.
So, and nobody who's drinking too much is drinking that serving of wine. So you might click that and not realize, and actually you are drinking double that amount because you're having a 250 ml large glass of wine. So they do things like that, just sneaky little, you know, omission like that. And they also are guilty of what's called social norming. So all of this is in the book. It's in Little Addictions, but it's where they sort of make the user feel better about drinking by implying that everyone's doing it, or openly saying that everyone's doing it. And so it's so sinister that people are downloading these apps to help their health and minimize their drinking, and they're then being cajoled to drink more because these apps are secretly funded by the alcohol industry. But honestly, I think all of this is going to come crashing down given the changes that I know are in the pipeline. So it's a good time for all of this. Hope is there.
Wow. Have you got a timeline on this? When's all this going to happen? This is completely new news to me, and it's
I'm not
super
supposed to be telling
exciting.
you any
No,
of
right,
this.
listen,
Any
listen, all four of our listeners are going to be really glad.
I had a conversation at a dinner party. I'm going to get in so much trouble.
No, we'll
No worry, right,
Yeah,
sure.
I was
keep it
told
quiet.
on the down low, but I was really excited by what I heard, and yeah, it's good news.
Amazing. So we'll move on before we get you in trouble. So when we talk about your new book, Little Addictions, it kind of follows a very different style to your previous books, which were kind of more driven from your kind of own lived experience. But what kind of inspired you to explore the kind of more socially acceptable addictions that we kind of relate to nowadays?
Well, I this book was actually driven by
Oh,
some
right,
experience
okay.
as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was that. I mean, I've beaten all my big addictions. So, I'm 12 years sober from alcohol. I quit smoking 11 years ago. I took that year off dating to sort of deal with my love addiction 10 years ago or 11 years ago. And what I find is that it's like I have like a giant Russian doll of addictions.
Right.
And the biggest one was the alcohol, but then I cracked that open, found another cigarettes, then another and another and another. And what I'm dealing with now are the tiniest dolls, but there are still dolls.
Right.
So I find that, these addictions, I'm not going to quit my phone. I'm not going to quit eating ice cream. I'm not going to quit procrastinating. I love a bit of procrastinating. I'm
Who
not going
doesn't?
to quit, I'm not going to quit a little bit of doom scrolling. I'm not going to quit any of that because it's just entrenched in my life, and actually I don't want to quit a lot of these habits that I take too far. But what I do want to feel is that I am in the driving seat and I have control over what I use and how I choose to use it. I hate that word control, actually. I'm going to replace it with agency. I have, I'm the chess player rather than the chess piece. And that's what drove me to write Little Addictions. And it looks at the 15 most common types of, so put aside, so alcohol obviously is insanely addictive. So is nicotine, so are many of the things that I'm talking about in the book, but it's person plus thing. So it's made really clear at the start of the book that this is not for people who have a big addiction to whatever thing we're talking about, whether it's cannabis, porn, gambling. It's not made for that. And there's a table for people to test out the size of their addictions. Because this book is about moderation, and it was deeply uncomfortable for me writing about moderating alcohol, because obviously I don't in any way think that's a desirable lifestyle choice, and I don't know how to do it, but all I could do was like hand over to my experts and ask them. And recognize that some people, when they're on the path to going alcohol free, often want to hear this stuff. So that was a really interesting chapter to write, and I had to rewrite it about 3 times. But the little addictions are, so there's the sticky 8. These are the most addictive things, so it's very difficult to have a little addiction to these things. Most people have a medium or large addiction to these things. They are alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, and then we have gambling, gaming, porn, our phones, and ultra processed food. So they're the most sticky, addictive things or substances. And then there's 7 more. Let's see if I can remember them all. There's shopping, caffeine, people pleasing, procrastinating, judgment and gossip, and oh no, I can't remember them. What are they, James? Come on, tell
Yeah,
me.
you got them all. You done good.
You've read my book. Have I hit them? I'm sure there's one missing, but
Judgment,
I always forget
gossip,
one.
dating, flirting, and
Just
sex, people
Dating,
pleasing,
flirting, and sex, of
shopping,
course. The thing that I was actually
uh,
addicted to myself, I've forgotten.
television. Oh, that's a big one for you. Caffeine, procrastination.
Yes. Yeah. So what are your little addictions? I'm intrigued.
I said, yeah, for me, since giving up drinking, I guess would fall under the ultra processed food, but for me, it's sugar, chocolate.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's just, and I am still battling that now. I mean, if I had bought shares in Tony's chocolate when I stopped drinking, I would be a very rich man because I do have an unhealthy relationship with chocolate for sure, and it's something I really battle with. But
Do you
yeah,
keep it in the house?
yeah, I do, and coffee as well. My
Yeah.
present from well, the present from me and my wife when I stopped drinking was bought a nice kind of bean to cup coffee machine. So now that's my go-to. I love my coffee. And I try to justify it to myself. I run a lot, I train a lot, all these things. So I feel that I probably have an addiction to that as well to some degree. But I kind of try to justify it to myself that, oh, I do this so I can eat this, and so it's that side of it. But definitely sugar is the biggest one for me.
Yeah,
Mm.
I hear you on that.
I'm kind of the same actually. I wasn't really didn't have a sweet tooth at all when I was drinking. But I kind of found myself over time, when I was in the pub with people and I wasn't drinking, I'd be a bit like, I might have a dessert, because because I've got the bandwidth now. You kind of feel like, well, yeah, I don't drink anymore, so yeah, why not? And then I kind of acquired this kind of sweet tooth that I never had before, so I didn't really need to go and do that. But I'm the same, like dark chocolate, 85% chocolate, and yeah, we were talking about it on email before we spoke. I kind of moved into 85% organic chocolate, thinking that would be okay. But you don't think that's kind of
I've got
that's UPF, right?
I-
I think that
It
sounds
sits within the
pretty
UPF camp.
okay to me, but
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay.
it's
I've
it
got
is still ultra processed. I do know that there's only a couple of types of chocolate that aren't ultra processed, which is quite shocking when you think about, I
Mm.
practically think of 85% cocoa chocolate as a health food.
mm,
That is not what I choose, by the way. I'm straight on with the Tonys, like with the nuggets of
Oh,
caramel, and
really?
that's
I'm
mine.
there as well.
It.
The chocolate isn't really my thing. It's much more ice cream and biscuits for me. But it's such a common experience that people find this because there's
Mm,
tons of sugar in booze.
mm.
And so when people quit, they suddenly, they become a cookie monster or a
Mm.
sugar
Do you
monster.
know? Do you know what though? It's not the fact that it's got the sugar in it or anything. It's the way that you behave with it. Because I kind of got quite into the ultra processed food narrative a little while ago, and you talk about it a lot brilliantly in the book. And it's that kind of blindless overconsumption. It's the way that people eat kind of Pringles and Oreos. Once you pop, you can't stop. That kind of thing, where you're literally just shoveling it in so fast, and it's that kind of autopilot response to it. And I kind of see that with dark chocolate when I'm eating it. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just like, I can eat the entire bar in literally 30 seconds. And that is the behavior of how you consume ultra processed food. And that's what I kind of don't like about it. It's not the ingredients of it, because it's relatively healthy, but it's the behavior of how I behave with it.
Yeah. And I just want to put this out there as well. If anyone's listening to this and thinking, oh my God, I'm 30 days sober, don't take chocolate away from me.
No,
Or
no.
TV, or whatever else I've written about. I forgot TV. TV is a big little addiction
Mm,
for me. Or social media. Don't take those things away from me. They're keeping me together. And absolutely, do not try and tackle anything else if you are in the first streak of sobriety. But obviously, we're like, you're 5 years deep, both of you,
mm,
and I'm
yeah,
12 years. So that's when you start to look at the wider picture and start to look at little addictions and like figure out how you can get your screen time down and all of
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
But
I've
when
never,
you're in the first year, I just think do whatever.
yeah, I've
I
never
mean,
woken
don't
up in
do
a
crack.
skip after too
Don't
much chocolate.
don't do any drugs. But if you're eating chocolate or watching a couple of episodes of TV or scrolling Instagram, it's not the end of the world.
Mm,
Just focus on not drinking. That's your main goal.
mm,
So I will just add that caveat.
yeah.
I was really fascinated by your take on television, actually, because when you put it into lifetime years, that kind of scared me a bit, because you've moderated yourself down to like 1 hour a night. Is that right?
Yeah, and occasionally I'll binge like I did yesterday. So yesterday I watched 2 episodes or something because it just hooked me in. and then I'll take the next night off, and I feel so much better for it. I
Mm.
really do. And now that I've used something called time boxing, which is a behavioral change tactic, and I've time boxed it within 9 and 10. Occasionally I'll break out of that, but now it does feel quite weird if I watch it outside of those times. And so much of this is just about rebuilding a healthier habit around something that's very moreish. That's what I found. And the same with my phone. So it's really unusual now for me to have my phone on past 8 p.m. And I put it behind. Sometimes I'll turn it off at 6. I'm like, it feels like rebellious to do that.
Yeah.
I get a buzz from that. Whereas
Mm.
before I would have felt deprived by that. So
Mm.
it's flipped in my head. And now, and I know that James, obviously you said when we met that you sometimes don't turn it on till 11 or 12. That is wild to me.
I'll be honest, that I kind of set out to do that. It actually was initially it was one, so it was after lunch because my idea was that I kind of go to the gym in the morning and build up natural dopamine, and then use that to power myself from 10 till 1 when I try to do meaningful work in flow, because you haven't got the dopamine spikes from the mobile from. But I recently moved on to Instagram. I used to kind of do most of my business work on LinkedIn. And I moved on to Instagram and I found it insanely addictive. And I found that I was just using it like literally all of the time. And yesterday I kind of made a rule with myself that exactly what you've just said. So I've set guardrails in place that I'm only going to use Instagram between 10 and 1 and 4 and 7. And that's it. After
Yeah,
that
that's
it goes away because I just saw my behavior around it and I was just like, shit, you're constantly checking this like literally every 5 minutes. I was on it all the time and I was like, oof, no. So
yeah.
yeah, I use Windows, so similar to what you're saying. So it's 6 hours a day, but I'm not on it for those whole 6 hours, but during the time
Yeah.
when I'm working, I'll allow myself to use it then. But if I'm out walking the dog or I'm at the gym or I'm spending the evening with my wife, then it's definitely not happening.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's really smart. And I think it is just about finding what guardrails work for us. The things that work for me are I will have no consternation about deleting Instagram if I'm using it too much. And it flashes up with that message where it's like, you're going to lose data, whatever this, blah, blah, blah. I don't lose anything. That's absolute nonsense.
Mm.
And that works for me. And I don't see that as an extreme tactic. I just re download it after 24 or 48 hours when I need to, because same with me, I use it for work. It's part of my job.
Mm.
So I can't put it down altogether. And I don't want to either because I like connecting with readers there. But the other thing that works for me really well is putting my phone behind a cuddly toy of my daughter's, because that means I have to move. It used to be a rainbow seal, now it's a Care Bear. I have to move the Care Bear in order to get to my phone. And there's something in my brain that I'm like, I am prioritizing my phone over my family right now. And I
Mm.
don't want to do that. So that activates my prefrontal cortex. So much of it is about activating your prefrontal cortex, which I interviewed 5 or 6 neuroscientists in the book about this, because that is what helps us regulate this stuff and make decisions that has our long-term self in the frame rather than our short-term self. Because when we're being driven by fast dopamine, which is, your phone, all of those little addictions that we've just talked about, caffeine, sugar, TV, whatever, screen time, it is not about the big picture. It's not about what is best for me over the course of today or over the
Mhm.
course of this week. It's all about, what do I want now? What do I want as a quick fix? And so I reckon I've got my long-term self in the driving seat 75% of the time now. And
We'll take
then,
that.
yeah, I think before it was like 25% of the time. So, and I still have what I call teenage days where I just do whatever the hell I like. And, I'll lie down. And if I want to watch 3 hours of TV, I will. And then I'll adjust by, having a couple of days off. And I'll just eat ultra processed everything and order a takeaway. And I have about 1 or 2 of those a month. And that feels good to me because, it's not the norm. So yeah, lost my thread now.
In the book, you describe the prefrontal cortex as the adult in the room, which is I,
Mm.
I love that analogy. Can you talk a little bit about that, a little bit more about how it relates to the limbic system? And um, I've just found that analogy really, really fascinating.
Yeah, so I spoke with, as I say, a number of neuroscientists, and one of them, well, many of them, described the prefrontal cortex as like the responsible adult. It's obviously not, it's a brain region. You know, you don't have a responsible adult running around your brain. But if that brain region was to be personified, it would be the person who, you know, has packing cubes and uses them, who knows all about foreign policy, who has 4 different types of pension, you know, the most sensible person, you know. And so I thought that was really interesting. And we know that when we're in active addiction, which I definitely classified myself as when I was drinking, you know, 7 or 8 bottles of wine a week, I think I was actively physically addicted. Our prefrontal cortex shrinks. And so that means that it becomes even more cyclical because we don't have that sensible adult, you know, reigning over our decisions. And what happens is that the limbic system, which is like the seat of all addiction, begins to take over. And one of my experts described it. So the limbic system and the striatum, it's like a dog and teenager running your life. And, you know, if you allow them to, they will run your life. And it would be like a dog and teenager driving your car with you in the back seat, you know. So we can use these tactics to sort of strengthen and bring our prefrontal cortex to the fore. And a lot of it has to do with installing delay, installing friction, you know, making it, as you say, the guardrails, you know, installing a pause so that our bigger, longer term self has a chance to go, hang on. I'm not sure I want to do that right now. I'm not sure I want to inhale like a whole bar of Tony's, or, you know, spend 4 hours watching TV instead of working on that pitch deck, you know. So it comes into the room and it really starts to make the decisions for us.
And it's tricky, right? Because it feels like that pause is trying to be snatched away from us from every angle.
Yeah.
Speaking as a dad, and I look at, you know, I'm of an age now when I watch television, we had to wait a full week to find out who shot JR. Whereas now,
You're on your own there in terms of that age,
I know.
Steve.
Well, you're like, who's JR?
I know what he's talking about.
Sorry, you
I
know.
know. Yeah.
So, you know, but it's that ability to wait, and I see it with my kids, and I see that and it. Myself and my wife Jo, we really try to manage that, and we're really very cautious of it, and obviously working in the field that we do, and also the help of reading your book, and but being aware of that, and it terrifies me because the ability to just not have to wait for anything, it's just there the minute you want it instantly. If you want to watch
Yeah.
100 episodes of a program, you can do it over the course of 2 days. If you're playing a game, it's hooking you in at every single stage to keep you entertained. Once that then moves into your mobile phone, which it's doing for my eldest now, and we're very restrictive on that, I can see very clearly how that is impacting so quickly after him being allowed a phone, which is less than a year ago. And it's
It's
terrifying.
terrifying.
Yeah.
It really is. And one of the experts that I spoke to for the book, Dr. Anna Lemke, she describes it as prefrontal cortical atrophy. That's what's happening because we're not having to wait for anything. If you compare it to when we were growing up, you know, like if you wanted a takeaway, you had to phone the only restaurant in your village or town that did takeaway and have a really awkward conversation and made sure you have cash, and then have the encounter and you make sure you got a tip, you know, all of those things.
Actually get off the couch and go and
Yeah,
get it.
actually, yeah. It's like so effortful. And yesterday I ordered a takeaway and it's just boop, boop, boop. There we go. It's at my door.
Yeah.
Like it's so easy now to access that, to access whatever it is you want. And the scary thing with alcohol actually is that is now being brought into the picture where you can just pick up an app and order and it is brought to your door. And that was only just beginning to be the case when I quit drinking 12 years ago. But now there's a real problem with it, you know, because if you don't have the friction of having to go to the shop and behave sober enough to buy the alcohol, then that's a real problem. And people are just, you know, they're able to just get it to their door. So yeah, we are living in the age of peak addictiveness. I think, as you say, like there's endless episodes. You could never watch everything that's on your TV. when I was growing up, there was 5 channels, and
Mm,
there was hardly anything to watch, and you had to wait a week.
mhm,
Um, One of my behavioural experts, he said that in their family, they have this motto: "In 10 minutes, I can," no matter what it is, so that they are training their teenage daughter to wait. And now it's so inbuilt that she is just used to that delayed gratification. So she doesn't, just pick something up and instantly get the thing. And when you think about gaming as well,
mm,
even when Game Boys came in, there was still friction in that because everyone could see you were gaming.
Mm.
You had to have the thing, and it had to be charged, and all of those things. And now we can be on our phone, like pretending to work, and actually just being on Candy Crush or whatever, and just spend hours and hours and hours doing that per day and not really noticing. And we do know, so with gambling as well, which is one of the most insidious life destroying addictions. So whenever you, in the 80s and 90s, if you lived within 50 miles of a casino, your chances of becoming addicted to gambling shot up. I can't remember what the stat was, but I think it was 3 times as likely. And now the casinos and the game and the Deliveroo and everything, Tinder, all of it is in our pockets. It's
Mm.
just there. We just like reach for it and it's there. So it's no wonder we're all struggling with this stuff. And they call it the attention economy
Yeah.
because, there's all of these different companies, industries competing for our attention. But I think it's more useful to think of it as the time economy, because that is our most precious resource, our time. And we are having it snatched away from us just
Mm.
by people who want our eyeballs and our money and, our hours. And it's up to us to snatch it back and decide what we do with it.
It's interesting there too. You talk about time. I'm just going to pivot slightly back onto alcohol because I think one of the things that's really one of the probably the biggest benefit of going alcohol free is that time that you get back, not just the actual drinking and not just the hangover, but the headspace and things. And one of the things we talk a lot about on this podcast and also in our community as well is that not just the bit about identity, but how do you kind of fill the time when alcohol is taken away. And one of the things that really helped me on that journey was your book, The Unexpected Joy of the Ordinary, and finding new things that light you up that you just didn't really kind of notice before. How long did it sort of take you to kind of start to fill that gap that alcohol left behind? And what were the sort of things that you first started to do that you found, obviously writing's one of them, but lit you up?
Do you know what? I don't know if I felt that gap as keenly as other people maybe do, because I always feel overwhelmed and like I don't have enough time to do all the things that I want to, like to read all the books I want to read, or listen to all the things I want to listen to. I feel like I'm constantly battling against overwhelm, or write all the things I want to write. So it was luxurious for me. I didn't feel like this huge, how do I fill my time sort of dilemma. I was like, okay, I know what I want to do. I want to go to yoga workshops. I want to ride horses. I want to go for a walk on Devil's Dyke. I want to do this. So it was really exciting to me to reclaim that time. But one thing that I do think is really true now we're talking about time is that it's also very, very important to put a lot of that time into consolidating why you are no longer drinking, which
Mhm.
we talked about earlier. But reading books about it, listening to podcasts like this one, writing about it, just bedding that down, because the more you do that in the early days, the more likely it is to stick. So a lot of people in traditional recovery circles, they say that you should spend every hour that you spend drinking on not drinking. So that's the whole, you should be spending, if you drank 5 times a week, you should be going to meetings 5 times a week. I didn't do it that way, but I did it I probably spent maybe half of the time that I had spent drinking, like forging that new pathway, that new neural
mm,
pathway, by
mm,
reading about it and learning about it and
mm.
re-angling and reframing. And then the rest of the time I just went off and did fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was working in a job where I was traveling a lot at that time when I decided to stop, and I literally binge listened to podcasts and audiobooks and just filled my time doing that. And it's so true. It's like that opposite of addiction's connection, and it's understanding and realizing that you're genuinely not the only person out there in this situation, because it can be very isolating when you first think about it. Actually, as I started to discover more how many more people were in exactly the same situation as me, it just made it so much easier.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, connecting with those people is so important. You know, building that kind of sober village, even if it's just people that you chat to online, and
Yeah.
hopefully eventually meet up with in person. But that is so crucial because it can be. I didn't really know anybody else that didn't drink apart from a couple of members in my family, because it definitely runs in my family.
I can't imagine what it must have been like 12 years ago. I mean, literally must have just been like one in a million. I mean,
Uh,
nowadays it's still quite rare, but it must have been. How long was it? How long did it before you started to meet other people that didn't drink? I mean, outside of AA, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, well, I did meet people through AA, but that's not where I found my sort of sober
Your
village.
tribe.
Yeah, so Instagram barely existed then. It was just, people putting pictures up, like arty pictures up. That was it. And so I found them through Facebook groups, and most of them lived in America. Because, as you say, like
Mm.
sober people were thin on the ground. So, but I mean, that ended up being beautiful because I ended up having these trips to, like, saving all my money that I used to spend on drinking and going to San Francisco and meeting up with these amazing women. And we met up in Bruges. And, that's the other thing about quitting. You just have so much more money.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You
So
really do.
much more,
Yeah.
and you can do great things with it. And I poured most of mine into traveling, and
Yeah.
I'm really glad I did. And learning to dive and
Mm.
things like that. And it just, life becomes so much more lush and interesting and varied, rather than what we're told, which is that it becomes boring and flat and dull. It's just
Mm.
absolute nonsense. So yeah, I think it was difficult, and it was 12 years ago. The attitude was very much, "Oh, you've quit drinking. Poor you.
Poor you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened?" Like, you were treated with pity,
Mm.
and also just people wanted the dirt, and that doesn't happen anymore. In fact, the last time, I haven't been sober shamed for I do not know how long. The last time it happened was about 3 years ago at a party, and I laughed in their face because I just couldn't believe it. They were like, "Why aren't you drinking? That's boring." I just laughed and walked away because I just couldn't believe that was happening. So thankfully, we're living in a dramatically altered landscape where people don't, you
Mm.
know, but it still happens, but
Do
it's
you know
rare.
what though? It's still a really, really real thing in people's heads.
Yeah, totally.
Because
Yeah.
Stephen obviously, as coach people to take a break from alcohol, and that comes up more than anything. Yeah, because we have that perception of maybe that happened when we were 25 or whatever, and it was 20 years ago. But that memory is really embedded because it was
Mm.
almost like a moment of humiliation that you don't kind of forget easily, and people carry that around and think that that's going to happen when they're in their 40s, kind of like now. And then the
Mm,
reality is, it's those days, to a large extent in most circles are gone. A
yeah,
third of people did dry January and that kind of thing. It's completely socially acceptable and entirely mainstream to take
yeah,
periods of time out off alcohol, or not to drink at all. But most people have that memory of when they were sober shamed, and it's just not a thing anymore. It really is. And even if it is, and if you're in your 40s, you can just you can diffuse that in seconds. Yeah, I'm taking a
Laugh
break
in the
from alcohol.
face.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Laugh in the face.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I mean,
I'm
it's
gonna
so
do that now.
bizarre when you think about how, what why. I mean, the worst thing that you can be called at a party, for a start, is boring.
It's
So it's
boring.
no
Mm.
wonder that it feels very acute for people and very sensitive. And I felt that way for years, and I would apologize for my non-drinking and sort of try to demonstrate that I could still be fun and all of this. And now I just think, why does it change my personality? What's in my glass?
Mm.
It really doesn't. It's just your perception of my personality.
Yeah.
And back in the bad old days, I had two really interesting experiences at dinner parties where, you know, those dinner parties where you just sit next to random people and you have to befriend them. Both times I was sat next to a guy who was drinking quite, you know, enthusiastically and didn't realize I was not drinking. And we had a great time, great conversation. An hour and a half later, it transpires that I'm not drinking. And they say, "Oh, you're no fun," and turn away. But before that, they thought I was fun
That's interesting,
and
isn't it?
interesting. So much of it is about the other person and their
Oh,
perception.
completely. Yeah.
And it's you know, it's nothing to do with you. And I really do think it's just going to fade out altogether. You know, 4 in 10 Gen Z don't drink now, 3 in 10 millennials, you know,
Mm.
and it's just going to get to the point where it's like 50-50 drinkers and non-drinkers. I would even not be surprised if we reach that in the next decade. Things have changed so dramatically in the past decade. We'll probably get there.
There's a
Mm.
lot of debate on that point, and it's one that we're constantly having on this podcast. What's your take on it? What do you think the reasons are behind the massive drop off, you know, in the younger generation's relationship with alcohol? What have you learned about that? What do you think it is?
I think it's really overstated, the whole they're scared of being filmed thing, and that's why they don't drink. And, you know, I think that's very much something that the press likes to peddle, is this sort of vision of uptight teenagers who are so scared of letting go because it consolidates this narrative of, oh, wasn't it brilliant when we all went out and got shit faced?
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody cared about camera phones. They tend to call them camera phones. And I just don't think that's true. I just think Gen Z are smart and
Mm.
they know about the health stuff, and they have watched older generations get absolutely plastered, like me. You know, my younger Gen Z relatives, a number of them don't drink or barely drink. You know, they might drink a few times a year. And I do think I probably helped with that. They were like, I don't want to be her. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do think that's what's happening. And, you know, they're just prioritizing other things, their health, their fitness, their careers, you know, whatever, money.
Mental health. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, mental health is a huge one. And yeah, it will continue to gather pace until it really is 50-50.
There's a good mate of mine. His son's out in Australia. He's been out there for about 18 months now, and he's about the same age as maybe little bit older than I was when I went out to Australia. And I think about my trip to Australia when I was 22, 23, and I'm like, we didn't have a lot of pictures, but they would look very different to him. He's literally entering high rocks competitions up and down the Gold Coast with his shirt off and baby all up to the max. Look at me prancing up and down the beach. I'm like, that's not what it looked like for me. So you're right. They're completely learning a different thing. And I think that's the huge thing. I think back to how I learned about alcohol. My dad had a bar in the house, and it was the neighbors were round every Christmas and Boxing Day. It wasn't a huge issue in our house, but I very much associate alcohol with fun from the word go. And that was the only way to have fun, was to drink. And, I think nowadays that's definitely shifting 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there was an auto assumption as well that everyone would grow up to be a drinker
Mm. Yeah.
as well. I mean, it was never presented to me as an option.
No.
It was
No.
just, you are going to drink at some point. So here we go. We'll give you some alcohol pops at this family party so that you don't get into the harder stuff. You know, it was such a strange time that
Mm.
young teenagers were given alcohol because it was assumed that otherwise they might drink too much. Like, let's give them this alcohol that's like bright orange and actually the same as a bottle of Stella. What was that? That was
Yeah.
really strange.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, awareness is really growing now that, so, you know, the stats around, if we start drinking before the age of 15, we have a 40% chance of
40%.
later addiction to
Mm.
alcohol.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think awareness is growing around that, mainly because I keep going on podcasts and talking about it,
That's in your
writing
first book,
pieces
isn't
for
it?
newspapers, because I'm like, why don't people know this? This study was
Mm.
in 1998. You know,
Yeah.
it was on 43,000 people. Why don't people know that you should not be giving your 14-year-old teen alcohol if you want them to have a better chance of not getting addicted to it. It's a bizarre, topsy-turvy world that we live in, where we think that we need to teach teens how to drink, when actually what we need to do is teach them how to socialize without drinking.
Mhm. It's nuts,
But
isn't it? It's completely nuts.
it is, but we didn't know that back then. People should forgive themselves because they didn't know, and that was very much sewn into the narrative that that's what you do. Oh, my dog's coming to join us. I can see that
Oh,
you're.
bring you. I've got my a couple of guests here. This is Arnold. Hey, Arnold, say hi to Catherine. And that's
Hi.
Olive at the back there.
Oh, they're so
Mine,
cute.
mine's locked in the house because she's half Springer, so she'd literally be jumping all over my head.
Mine's half Springer.
Oh, really? What's the other half?
They're a nightmare. Springer poo. I mean, I love
Oh,
him to bits, but is yours really anxious?
no, no, sorry, she is great. We've got a Springer door, so yeah, she's a half
Okay.
black lab. Yeah, but she's tucked away inside. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Moving on
you,
to dog chat.
yeah, we could quite easily do dog chat quite easily. So you've done. So this is now your sixth book in 9 years. Is that right?
I think it's my seventh, but that's including the journal. Yeah, I like to work.
Wow.
I mean, that's so. I've got to selfishly ask you because I've already consumed the whole of Little Addictions already. Any clues on what's coming next? Anything you can share or hint at?
Well, I'm going to do another novel. So I've got another novel book
Uh-huh.
deal. So that's what I'm working on at the minute. And also, there is a potential that Unexpected Joy of Being Sober will be made into a film.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Are you looking for a bartender?
Oh my God.
yeah. Do you want to be a
Really? That is
Yeah.
huge news. Well, if that
Wow.
I
happened,
know.
congratulations. You must be.
Yeah,
That is huge news.
Yeah, I mean,
that
there's
is
about
massive.
300 different hoops that, it seems like and getting anything made in TV and film land is like a miracle because there's so many different things that need to align, but it's looking really good.
So
So yeah,
would that be like a theatrical feature, or would that be more of a documentary?
no, it would be a feature film.
So I'm picturing like a Bridget Jones type thing. Is that
Yeah, kind of like
really?
Bridget Jones meets, I don't know, what's a really messy Bad Santa.
I love a bad Santa. Wow, that is really exciting.
Yeah,
We're getting all the scoops, aren't we?
We
This is
really
you
are.
brilliant.
We
are.
This
really
is
are.
really good.
Oh, I don't know how you're getting all this out of me. We
This is
better
great. This
stop
is this goes better than I could have
before I
possibly
tell you
imagined.
some
have
secrets.
you got a favorite out of all the books you've written, or is it just like trying to pick a favorite child? Have you got which one means the most to you?
Oh God, that is literally like the favorite child, Sophie's Choice. No, I can't pick. I mean, I have favorites for different reasons. Like the Unexpected Joy of Being Sober changed my life, like I've
Mm,
said, because writing it all down consolidated that choice and meant that it truly hasn't felt hard since then to not drink. And as you say, like my whole brand is not drinking as well. So I think that helps, that like layer of public accountability. And then I don't know that I really can't choose, but there's for writing, I would choose possibly The Ordinary.
I
And
love The Ordinary.
thank you. And for journalism, like investigative journalism, I think Little Addictions is
Yeah.
the top of the
Mm,
pile. So
mm.
it's hard to choose, but yeah, thank you for
Wow.
liking them.
No, we love them. I love them. Absolutely. Well, something we often ask of our guests, and before we kind of wrap up for today, is obviously the journey you had before you wrote The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober, and your life with alcohol before you made that break, and that's now led you on to write 7 books and inspire so many people. Would you have changed anything before you wrote? Would you go back to your relationship with alcohol and change anything in your life in hindsight?
No, not a single thing. I don't believe in that. I think that therein madness lies, that my dad always used to say, regret the things you haven't done rather than the things you have done.
Mm, mm,
And I think that's a really good life philosophy. There's no changing it. And all of it led me to where I am now, where I am so incredibly happy. And if my drinking hadn't careered out of control, maybe I wouldn't have gotten sober and I just would have limped through life, sort of like in a half life, trying to moderate and just not feeling very good and just, living for Friday and Saturday nights. And I do not want that life. So I'm really glad that it unfolded the way that it did, even though I had some really dark moments, thinking about suicide. And, I really went to the absolute bottom of human existence at points, but I wouldn't change any of it because it's brought me to where I am now, which is exactly what I'm meant to be. And I'm so happy.
Yeah, it's no light without the dark, right?
Yeah,
You have to have that
exactly.
comparison.
Yeah.
Well, look, Catherine, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. And I think when Steve and I look back on 2026, this for sure is going to be one of the highlights for us. So thank you for being so generous with your time. Where can people find out more about you and about all of your wonderful books?
Mainly on Instagram at Unexpected Joy of. Yeah, mainly there.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Catherine, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to chat to you.
I've loved this chat, and I really, really enjoyed meeting you both at the book party. So thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks very
Absolute
much.
pleasure. Thank you, Catherine.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.